So the homie Goresh made an incredibly polarizing tier list video again, and today we are going to be live reacting to it. Let me know your thoughts on his picks, and we'll go ahead and talk about my thoughts as well as we proceed through. All right, let's go ahead and hop right into the Goresh tier list. Shout out to the homie for the content we're reacting to, and let's see what he says.
This is going to be the October 2023 edition, so if you're watching this at a later point in time, just keep that in mind. Before we jump in, I always like to give 3 points. Number 1, all characters are considered at 14 stars. Best teams, best equips, max title boosts, best possible situations.
So Goresh says that everything is at the peak of everything, right? That's the first disclaimer. First thing you need to know. It's very important that you know that, because you're going to look at this list. You're going to see it out of context on Twitter and stuff like that or wherever. And it's not going to have any of that context. That's not all the context. He will provide more like he always does,
etc. Number 2, this is going to be a top 10 best characters in a vacuum list, so this can change down the line. The spots are pretty fluid. We'll see variations.
The current meta in mind. It's not kit compared to kit, right? So that is important as well, context.
In 2 weeks from now when the next banner comes out. So all the characters on this list, all the spots on this list are pretty fluid, so keep that in mind. Then number 3, this list consists of rankings that are entirely of my own opinion. It's just my own thoughts, how I feel about the game. I experience the game different from a lot of you guys. You guys have probably play and fight against different characters than me a lot of the time. So this is my own personal list based off my experience. And with that being said, I'm going to go a little bit faster through this one.
Okay, so first thing first, the video is playing at a really high speed, so sorry if it's not, you know, something you can understand, but it's a lot easier for me to consume YouTube content at 1.25 times speed. So let me know in the comments down below if you're like me. But this is a long video, so we're going to kind of just jump around a bit. So the last point that he said as a quick disclaimer was his experience with the game. That's, again, pretty easy to understand, pretty obvious stuff. So the first thing that he brings up is the honorable mentions, and he does bring up some of these characters here.
I don't know how to evaluate this character. It's very, very tough. This is probably one of the single hardest to evaluate characters in the history of this game. A lot of what he's doing is dependent upon how many Dragon Balls you're drawing. This character can have a string of luck where you draw 7 Dragon Balls in the first 5 counts and he rushes the opponent and you just get rid of somebody really fast and you win the game instantly. Or you can go 40, 50, 60 counts in a row without getting a single Dragon Ball. He doesn't get cover null, he doesn't get keyback, he doesn't get damage.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, there's just so much variation in his performance. On top of the fact that I feel like the Dragon Ball Saga celebration was very, very bad, and they dropped the ball hard with that.
He was a movie release, not a saga, Dragon Ball Saga release.
Reliable characters that are able to stand up to the likes of like
that was a movies buff
rushes and stuff like that. That's pretty common in the meta right now. Well, less common than it was 2 weeks ago, but yeah, it's still pretty common. So I don't know. It's tough to evaluate this character. I feel like you're not really going to be running him on movies. You can, but I think you're not probably going to do that. So right now he's honorable mentions. This character, I mean, again, hardest to evaluate character in the game right now. That's at least a meta relevant character in my opinion. You could probably put him as high as like 6 if you wanted to at his like peak performance level, but I don't know. I have him here for now. We'll see what happens later on.
If I were to rank the Goku, I would put him somewhere around there, top 7.
I'm a bum, but he definitely is not as good as he used to be.
Talking about Rose here.
I mean, he's a green character that gets crushed by a blue character, and then obviously Goku and Frieza still kill him easily. The Gammas kill him easily. All like Cell destroys his character, so it's tough. Rose, I mean, you can sit in the back and just toss a bunch of blues out and hopefully you catch somebody in a sidestep, and if you catch Janemba with a blue card and you win the game once every 20 matches with him, and he could be pretty good there. But in a consistent setting where this guy needs to sit there and build up and attack and attack and attack in the meta, that's the fastest meta we've seen in a long time. It's just not his...
Listen to the first couple. I wanted to hear the first couple. I don't really care as much about the others, but he basically explains his viability for those characters, why they're on the fringe, right? So I also really like the inclusion of the next 2 greens as well, because I think that Magenta is a character that's probably a little underrated by a lot of players. Definitely can catch you off guard. And that Goku may have been underrated on release and may be more valuable today. And my thing with Zamasu, as a last thing there, is I think he's just directly replaced by Janemba on the teams he would be applicable to, right? So kind of is what it is, I guess, unless you're using Future. But then if you go to Future, I would probably rather use Trunks. And Janemba, like as a character, also shutting down key reduction, stuff like that. Very important, very powerful stuff to be shutting down and taking away that Zamasu does depend on.
It's like you're just
all right, so let's get back to it.
That you catch the enemy in a sidestep with your blue card. Like, you're not just going to hit Janemba with the blue card unless the opponent's like just sidestepping constantly briskly. Number 10, we have Captain Ginyu. I'm a little bit torn on where to place this guy right now. I think revives are extremely valuable just because, again, there's no character in the game that can really actually tank right now. So having a revive basically acts as like one of the only ways you can actually
I feel like Goresh is doing a collab with me and we're talking.
Ultimates and stuff like that. Captain Ginyu is just like, what team are you running him on? The Ginyu Force is okay. I mean, they're not as good as they were in release because Recoome and Goldo can't tank. I mean, Janemba.
Because the damage is so high. The characters have 100, like Janemba has 150% in just one line of text. Obviously, there are a lot more damage buffs in Janemba's kit. The damage is so incredibly high, not to mention that the offensive stats are higher than the defensive stats by a big margin. Like, it's like 100K, right? Something like that. So, like, the defense is dead. So revive endurance has always been valuable, and it's even more valuable now.
Star Ginyu Force team, a full Z plus, the whole works. 14-star Rikumen Goldo, Zenkai buffed by the green Namek Kaioken Goku. From Janemba's raw ult, through their 80% ultimate arts power down, it did have his HP. It was just gone. Boom, instantly gone. He gets extreme bleed afflicted, and then he just goes to like a third HP, and then Janemba just like hits him once instead. So
wow, that's impressive.
Tough to put Ginyu on there. Ginyu can work well, of course, still with like Goku and Frieza on their teams, but they also get crushed. So I don't know. I feel like Ginyu, you maybe could put him like a slot or two higher than this, but I feel comfortable with him at 10. I feel like he's not really made any significant leaps and bounds up, and he's not really fallen off super hard either. So I feel okay with him being at 10. So
I'm gonna reserve comments until the end of the next, at the end, not midway through, an explainer for a character, so I don't have to do this multiple times. Just for the record, and if you are enjoying, hit the thumbs up. So with the Ginyu thing, he is at his best when you drop the Jason Birder for Goku and Frieza. But I can't tell you, I've missed the revive like 3 or 4 times, because unlike other revive characters, you actually have to use Ginyu, which is actually a downside, because, well, if you switch up his team a bit, because that means that if you get caught in a situation where you need that revive frame 1, you're not going to be able to use it. You're going to miss the revive, and Ginyu's just dead weight at that point. If you throw him in there, they throw the freaking frog, right? So that does kind of suck and does hurt him. Now, when he does actually go Goku mode, Ginyu Goku mode, his payoff is super high. Ginyu is an incredibly strong one-man army character that if he had cover nullification on the revive, you wouldn't be able to stop that guy, because he just goes and goes and goes and goes again. So Ginyu, I think, is a character that's very volatile. He could go higher, like Goresh says here, and I also think he could actually slide a little bit lower depending on the circumstance. But Ginyu is very strong, and by the way, that's really, really good for a character that's not even like a premium character, LF, Ultra, nothing like that, right? He probably is the only one of his kind on the entire list.
Number 9. All right, next we have Kid Buu. I'd say this character has gotten significantly better with Janemba coming out. Obviously, Regen has now obtained their Behemoth character. Kid Buu at number 9. Move on to number 8. Alrighty, number 8.
So Kid Buu, I think the problem with Kid Buu on release, I always said it, is that he didn't have type neutral. And so when Vegito Blue dropped like a month and a half later, he absolutely shredded Kid Buu. He kicked Kid Buu out of the meta. You remember when Kid Buu came out, a lot of the discourse was about how good he is. And so Kid Buu definitely needed a character like Janemba to cover that type weakness, because he can do it himself. Like most of the top characters can at least cover that weakness defensively, right? And then you have characters that are really good like Janemba, who I believe has both types of cover nullification of unfavorable elements. So that's one of the main issues with him. Like Goresh said, the green card on him was really, really strong. He is very self-sufficient. But I can already see that, I can already tell where this is going. And where this is on pace to go is with Janemba at number 1. I feel like that's where this is going. I haven't seen the list. I just know he did a video and I'm reacting to it. But he keeps bringing up Janemba as the benchmark, right? So with Janemba being the benchmark, I'm pretty sure he's number 1. And so I think he's going to base every character based off of, and again, like you said, this is meta reliant, so you have to consider that too. I think he's going to base every character off of the benchmark of Janemba, playing against or with Janemba if he's on the team, etc. And that may or may not be why Piccolo is at 8 right here, I believe. And I don't know if that's particularly fair when you say things like, oh, he's not a part of the core. Well, yeah, he can't really be a part of the core because Cell, I think, is... I'm pretty sure Cell's going to be on the list. We'll talk about Cell when we get there. But the synergy between him and Janemba is through the roof. So, like, yeah, if you're going to bring Piccolo, you know, as the green character, well, then, you know, because Janemba's going to be in a lot of matches, then Kid Buu, by default, can't be a part of the core. But I also don't think that only having a core 3 characters is the best way to play the game. I think that having 4 characters at minimum, in which Kid Buu not being as good as Piccolo or as relevant to the team, I guess you should say, as Piccolo or Cell is really a bad thing in particular.
We have Orange Piccolo. This is a character that I could talk at supreme length about. Where do I start with this guy? So, I mean, he's at number 8. That's, I think, is that the highest he's ever been on a list that I've made? I think it might be. Besides, like, when he first came out. Like, I was even number 8 on the first list I made from him. He was right around number 8, 9, somewhere. So
I said I was going to do this, but I really want to do this really quick. This is a byproduct. So hearing what he's saying right now, this is a byproduct of a meta shift where characters are volatile. They can go up, they can go down. And in Piccolo's case, he's a riser.
But obviously now that the best character in the game by far is Blue, you need to run a green, and I
There
think
it is.
more so than anything else, right? I've been saying the same thing about Orange Piccolo since he's come out. He's not bad, he's not terrible, he's not any of those adjectives. He's good, but he's not as good as he should have been. And I think, you know, since it's been a good 4 months since he's released, we have gotten a decent amount of power creep since then. And I would say that his placement at number 8 on here is not representative of how good he is as a character. It's more so just the fact that we don't have a single good green in the game. Like, there literally are no good green units in the entire game right now.
They hate green.
So I would just say that that's the reason why Piccolo is this high up. He actually does a pretty good job of being a two-way character, you know, in terms of being able to support Janemba on the defensive end. You know, the disruption, the arts power down, the card draw speed down, the healing as well, the support for Janemba. And then, yeah, I just mentioned the support is the offensive way that he supports Janemba. So he's a good two-way support character for regen. Of course, there are a lot of blue characters flying around. Of course, Janemba is the most prominent one. His ability to be able to defend against enemy Janembas is the most important one. Orange Piccolo definitely takes a lot of damage. At number 8, it would be nice if we actually got good green units in this game, huh? All right, number 7, we have Ultra Vegito.
Ooh, 7. Ooh, that's a... I don't really have many comments on Piccolo. I just wanted to say that I think that Piccolo is a character that is another riser. Like I said, based on the meta, what's available to him. I think that Piccolo, like Goresh said, wasn't as good as people thought he would be or that he should have been, but I do think he accomplishes his role very, very well. And like Goresh talked about earlier on, characters that have Revive, and I'll also throw in Endurance, have an increase in value because the game just has no defense, right? I think Revive is the more valuable and better of the two by actually a good margin. But nonetheless, though, Piccolo is all right.
Blue, obviously we were going to see a decline for this character after Ultra Janemba released.
I didn't think he'd fall to 7, though.
Like, this guy's like all of a sudden unusable now, which is certainly not the case. I mean, this is one of the most ridiculous characters they've ever released in the history of this game. We have gotten a lot of counters to this character, right? Namek, Goku, Trunks. But the thing with this Janemba release is, yes, Janemba is pretty bad for this guy. But guess who else Janemba is pretty bad for? The characters that previously countered this guy. Janemba obliterates Namek Goku. Janemba obliterates Trunks. Like, you honestly almost can't even use Trunks. Trunks is dead in the water right now. That's Zenkai Sword of Hope Trunks. His whole entire mechanic of his gauge reducing the enemy's ki by 100 to basically guarantee that you stop the enemy's combo was released because Janemba just utterly destroys him with no question at all. But in other ways, I think, you know, Namek Goku's play has definitely gone down. We've seen less play with Sword of Hope Trunks. Goku and Frieza are still pretty ubiquitous, but they're not as, you know, every single match you're running into them. I think Regen is easily the team I've run into the most so far this season with Janemba, and I've already done my God rank grind by the time I'm recording this video. I am top like 180 or something like that, so I've played a decent bit this season with Janemba. But yeah, people are acting like Vegito Blue is just all of a sudden unusable, which is definitely not the case. This character is still ridiculously busted, and even like if you get rid of Janemba's first gauge, like Vegito can do some work. He definitely can, but it's a lot tougher for him now than it used to be. So that's why he's at 7 here. Still think he's pretty good. So let's move on to number 6. All right, number 6, we have LF Namek Goku. Definitely a bit of a decline for.
I thought this was a funny transition. I think this is a funny transition because Goresh spent like a minute talking about how like screw this Goku basically because they put out counters. That's a little bit like of filling in the blanks myself, if you will, but that's the vibe I got. He's like, screw the Goku, and then number 6, boom, there's Goku. Oh my god. So Vegito Blue, I didn't think he would dip to 7. I probably wouldn't personally have him outside of 4, but I do understand that Goresh is saying that basically every match has a powerful blue character, and most notably that's Janemba, right? So it's making it tougher for Vegito to exist.
That at all. And then the other thing about this character, which we'll talk about more in depth once we get to Goku and Frieza, is the fact that this guy's entire playstyle is being able to chain together very, 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 very long combos, specifically green cards, right? This guy guaranteed draws a green card to extend his combos and then to continue to draw more cards and gain cover null. Guess what Janemba doesn't care about? Melee-based green cards, and he doesn't care about cover null, and he doesn't care about key reduction. This guy, Janemba basically nullifies his character's kit. Like, it's just, I don't know. Now, that's not to say this Goku can't actually perform well against Janemba, because he does have the single most broken mechanic in the game, probably still, which is the lock-in, the no-switching mechanic. So if you catch Janemba with a blast from somebody, or even this character, you can just swiftly lock him in with this guy and kill him. Right? It's definitely possible, right? Because Janemba can't counter ultimates. So this Namek Goku's still pretty good, I think, and obviously against characters that aren't named Ultra Super Janemba, he's able to do pretty well against. Orange Piccolo could be a pretty big issue for this guy, because Orange Piccolo, with the -2 card draw speed, can really hamper how fast this guy's able to chain together his gauge buildups, right? But other than that, I feel like he's actually still pretty good. I don't think he was, like, you know, made irrelevant because of Janemba, but he certainly was pretty negatively impacted by Janemba. So number 6,
I have no comments on him because I don't own him.
Can be interchangeable here. Let's move on to number 5. Okay, number 5 we have LF17.
Another blue character.
LF17 is still
Good
holding
lord.
on. I mean, he's still obviously very, very strong. He has a very strong kit that's going to age very well. Again, this character will probably just outage most of this list, and I've been saying that for 9 months now. This is not a good meta for Android 17, and the reason why is because this meta is probably the fastest meta we've ever seen. This character, his value continues to go up and up and up the longer the fights are. The healing he does whenever the enemy uses a blue card, the debuffing, the double vanish value he's getting, the ability to stall the fights out, the card draw speed he's collecting whenever he uses a blast. Like there's so many aspects of this character that just scale with length of time in the fight. This is the fastest meta ever. It's up there. Is this actually the fastest meta ever? The fastest meta ever might have been Cooler's meta, because Cooler touched you once and game over.
Yeah.
This might be the second fastest meta ever.
Cooler touched you. You were
one of the fastest
done.
metas of all time.
You were done.
And because of that, this guy's not really able to take advantage of his gauge to the most of or as well as he used to. Right? I've had plenty of matches fighting androids where I literally killed his entire team before 17's gauge even activated. And 17 himself, don't even get me started on how much damage 17 himself takes from Janemba. Janemba literally hits him 3 times and he's dead. 3 hits is all it takes for Janemba to kill him. So Janemba can actually kill this guy like in the length of time where his cover null is still active. So it's pretty rough for 17. I think one of the other things about this guy is that again, the Android team that we've ran up until this point has been 17, Cell, and the Gammas. I've seen a lot of people drop 17 off from the team to bring Magenta. I've seen a lot of people
you need
drop
a green
Cell to bring Magenta. So Magenta has seen a lot more play on androids. I don't know if I go that far, but people are definitely starting to notice that 17, he's not really fit to be the greatest in this meta, but I still think his heal and power down whenever the enemy uses an ultimate or a blue card, like that in combination with someone like Orange Piccolo, for example, like you can really put a stop to Janemba that way, right? There are certain combinations of teams where it's like hyper focused on just dealing with Janemba and that's it. The problem with those team builds is that like they get stumped by like other generic teams, like Goku and Frieza, Vegito Blue teams just kill that team really easily, right? So that's the downside there, but I think this is just not a good meta for 17. Obviously, the meta will change in the future, and Janemba won't be the best character in the game. Probably, we'll see. I don't know if there's going to be a 17 and 18 situation here, but 17, of course, it will be good for a long time to come still. So this is 17, number 5. Let's move on to number 4. All right, coming in at number 4, we have LF Tag Goku and Frieza. This character, of course, still one of the single greatest characters of all time in terms of just their individual kits and performance.
Spicy.
The problem with this character right now is, number 1, like historically, they've been a very tough to kill character. They go type neutral against blue cards and ultimates, even though they have 2 colors for some reason. They get their vanish back in various different ways. They have ridiculously strong green cards. Their blue cards hit ridiculously hard. The amount of card draw speed they get is stupid. Like there's a million things you can just shoot off on the laundry list to make this character sound ridiculous. Now they can't tank. I mean, it's just they get curb stomped by Janemba. Janemba just enters the battlefield, hits them twice, and they die.
Are the Gammas number 3
or whatever it is, right? So a lot of
they've
times,
got to be number 3.
Point,
or were they unhonorable?
This character performed really well because of the Rising Rush gauge, of course. That's the main draw of this character, the main allure of this character. We don't need the Rising Rush really as much anymore. Janemba just comes in and just kills people by himself without needing the Rising Rush. His ultimate comes in and one-shots people without needing the Rising Rush. This character gets hit by Janemba's ult and it's over. I mean, they just die, right? Janemba, the ability to use 2 ults too. On top of that, the extreme bleed trickling their health down, over the course of the fight. Again, I mentioned the same thing with Namek Goku with this character. This character, one of the major strengths that this character received as part of their buff is the ridiculous buff to Goku's green card. And that, I think, is one of the main aspects that has allowed them to look as impressive as they have been since they got buffed. Guess what they can't do now? They can't chain the green card into a million billion cards because Janemba just counters that, right? I mean, we're talking about an era where characters now no longer care about cover null. Right? Janemba comes in, Goku and Frieza are notorious for how much cover null they're able to obtain throughout their combos. And Janemba just doesn't care. Janemba just counters their cover null, and then guess what he does? He just smacks them with a 3 million damage ult, right? You can't really do much to that. It's a different era. We're moving into a different era in this game. Goku and Frieza are going to be around for a very, very, very long time to come, if not just for their unique gauge, but they're not the god of the game that they were prior to Janemba's release. Janemba is just, he's ushering in a new age of power creep, and I feel like I'm pretty comfortable with this character being at number 4 on the list. I think on top of that as well, like, where are you running this character? You can run them on like Universe Reps with 17 and stuff like that. You can throw them on Fusion Warriors with VB and Gogeta Blue potentially. You can throw them on Regen. You can throw them with Janemba. You can run them with Janemba, I guess, right? So there's definitely ways that you can make use of this character. Still, of course, they're a really flexible unit leader slot. They're still able to do really well against characters that aren't named Super Janemba. But Janemba's presence, I think, is definitely exposed the very few amount of flaws that this character has. Honestly, it's not even just flaws. It's just power creep. Like, actually, this Janemba has ushered in power creep. It's true. So, Goku
So I got something crossed my mind that made me kind of chuckle a little bit on the inside. I'm sorry, Garesh. Take a shot every time he says Janemba in this video. I need somebody to go through and count how many times the word Janemba is said in this video. It's got to be like 100 times, because Garesh wasn't ending a sentence without saying Janemba once. Oh, I thought that was so funny because I'm like, okay, and I hear Janemba, Janemba, Janemba. So one thing I want to kind of also say is Garesh is, and this is not a problem. Garesh is also operating with the assumption that Janemba is just gonna one hit ultimate blast each and every one of these characters into oblivion. Now that's not inherently wrong. If you give him the gauge, you're probably gonna get, I mean, he's gonna turn it into an ultimate, obviously. There's no like probably about it. That doesn't mean that you can't switch into a green character, you can't do this or that. And this applies to every character on the list. I just haven't been bringing it up. So he's making a general assumption. And part of that is because he's trying to equate each character he's bringing up to Janemba, right? So it's like, yeah, in the ideal scenario, you wouldn't have Goku and Frieza eat that ultimate because they'd get blown up. But I don't think, the funny thing about that is, like, I don't think that is something that's crazy, because they would get blown up by all the other characters. All the other characters on this list have an ultimate that would blow them up, pretty much, because they were never all that tanky in the first place. And you can also extrapolate that exact same thought process or comment to most of the other characters here anyway, because like I said earlier, there is no defense. The game is not, there's no defense. It's an offense game, right? So the key of the game is just maintaining priority. And see, that's where Janemba is like he said, resetting power creep again. This time last year, it was Beast Gohan who reset the power creep, and that was an insane thing. But now Janemba's trying to do it again with his gauge. But I also want to drive home that Janemba's gauge, while it is incredibly strong, very powerful, it's also a limited time thing. He starts with it, yes, but what about all the time in the middle of the match where he doesn't have the gauge? Don't get me wrong. When I played against this guy for the first time, I was using him and I understood how strong he was, but you don't understand how strong he is until you play against him, because you're faced with the opposition and you're seeing, okay, well, I can't do anything. You can't do anything. If you try to use a blast card, you better be careful, because he might blast armor you and he'll get priority that way. But again, that's a one-time thing in the beginning of the match. It sucks he starts with it, because if Janemba throws that ult, who's eating it? I don't know. shit, I don't know. 17? I guess. I don't know. But but like I said, that applies to every character on the list. That everything I just mentioned is not a Goku and Frieza exclusive thing. It's a every character on the list thing. So I do want to mention that, because the gauge, I understand how broken it is, but the vibe I've got is that it's being talked about like it's a limitless supply, always active type of deal. He gets it up to 3 times, and that's it. And 3 times is enough to beat somebody, don't get me wrong. But it's harder for him to get it outside of that first time, because he obviously starts with it. He needs to have an ally defeated or passively gets it over time. And over time or ally defeated means that the opposition is in a position where you could have and probably have already been taking advantage, right? So that's one thing I want to mention. And also, he's not really talking about any characters that are being used alongside Janemba. He kind of brought it up with, and I assume Cell is too, because this guy's number 3. He kind of brought it up, and he probably will bring it up. He brought it up earlier with the regen characters. Now they kind of interact a little bit with Janemba, but that's very vital too, because like I talked about how you can save your character from Janemba, well, they can also probably save Janemba from you. So this is where, like, Legends being a 3v3 game is very, very important, because you can make arguments both ways for each of these characters, all of them. Vegito Blue can make an argument to be as a lot higher in the list, right? So, like, just things like that. And it's cool to see the Gamma's at 3. Let's see what he says.
So number 3 on the list is going to be Tag Gamma 1 and 2. This is one of like the very, very, very few characters, if not like the only character in the game that can sort of sneak around Janemba's gauge. I mean, there's certainly going to be instances where they just can't help it and they have to use a blue or a strike or whatever on Janemba. Again, a lot of people starting to use Magenta on Android to sort of anticipate that and work around it. The goal with this character, of course, is to get to the Core Breaker mode, and the Core Breaker mode really is that. mechanic. Like it is utterly absurd. If you get to the core breaker mode on this character, there's a good chance you can just straight up win, right? Even against a character like Janemba. Like Janemba can't defend against the
That's
core breaker.
really slow in this fast meta,
the
though.
core breaker hits Cell and he's dead. The core breaker hits Orange Piccolo and he takes so much damage from it that your entire team gets to like 1 health. So, core breaker is really, I think, one of the reasons why I have this character so high up on the list. The problem with that is that in order to get to the core breaker, you have to be able to chain together combos. And again, as we've been talking about this entire video so far, it's very, very hard to do that when you have a character that does not care about cover null and basically just counters cover null, right? Anti special cover change nullification. Special cover change nullification is what this Janemba's gauge is. And again, it's not only that, you just smack him with an ultimate. That's on top of that as well. But the Gammas, I think, again, the Gammas cannot tank Janemba. Nobody in the game can tank Janemba. It's impossible. But against other characters that are not Janemba, for example, you're running Cell next to Janemba most of the time. This character is a really good character to use against Purple Cell. They can build up their gauge defensively as well. Remember, they don't only build up their tag switch gauge by attacking. They can also build it up by getting hit. They can build it up by using green cards, by missing cards as well. Like if you're in close melee range, they can miss with their blue card and still get the gauge built up. They're killing Dragon Balls. They're reducing Ki. They're getting their Vanish back when an ally is defeated with their green card. So I mean, these guys have a lot of tech to be able to do things really, really well. And on top of that, they do so much damage with their blast cards that if you have a hand where you have like 2 or 3 blasts in a row, you can really pressure Janemba into switching before having to go for a strike in a lot of instances. Even on the receiving end, I've been on the receiving end of like 10, 11, 12, 13 star Gammas, if not just 14 star Gammas, that have pressured my Janemba into switching. Because remember, one of Janemba's special abilities is the fact that he reduces ally sub count by 10, and he heals the whole team, and he removes enemy buffs when they use a Rising Rush. So a lot of times what will happen is the Gammas will be doing so much damage with their blast cards to Janemba that I can't really bank on them going for a strike. So I have to switch, and then when I switch, they just rush, or they just are able to continuously, then use strikes and build up the tag even more. So I feel like this character actually is aging pretty well. They're also supporting a lot of intangibles this character is able to do. The core breaker is like golden ability right now in this game. So I have the Gammas at number 3. I feel like it's a pretty safe spot for them. Let's move on.
So yeah, he does make it very clear that he doesn't think any character can tank that ultimate. So what I was talking about a minute ago. But I also wanted to ask, so the implication is that the Gammas can pressure Janemba into switching, but it's also that basically no other character on the list can. And I know that that's because they're range type and the gauge is strike based. But there are other ranged characters on this list. For one, isn't Goku and Frieza ranged? I mean, I feel like they're melee actually, but I think they're ranged. 17 as well. Like there are other ranged characters. So maybe it's the perfect combination of being ranged with all of these things, right? With the damage, the utility, all of that. So I don't have a problem with the Gammas being here. I just wanted to express that opinion that I thought of right then and there.
All right, next we have Purple Cell. I mean, this guy really
I hate this character.
Ideal time for himself.
I hate this character.
Androids at one of the best spots they've ever been in when this guy released. Now we have Regen, probably like just the single best team in the game. No, not probably, it is. I mean, Regen's the best team in the game. It's not even close. Where this guy makes the core cut of the team. I think the core that I use is Orange Piccolo, this guy, and then of course Janemba. This guy, of course, covers Janemba's weakness to green characters, which I don't even think matters right now because there's no good greens. I mean, I do fight a lot of Orange Piccolos now. Like Orange Piccolo is one of the most common characters I fight because you need to use him. You don't need this cell to like cover for Janemba against Orange Piccolo because Janemba can just tear through him on his own, but this guy definitely helps. We do run into the occasional Ultra Rose, and I just find it hilarious where like the cell literally does like 2/3 of Rose's HP in one attack. Like a normal blast is like half his HP. It's ridiculous. This guy is just ridiculous. I mean, again, he fits on like 2 of the best teams in the game, Androids and Regen. His AoE green card is so ridiculous for the team because it allows him to fill his hand up a lot of the times and then get cover null, and then you can chain that into Janemba having cover null and drawing a card and then continuing the combo and then using his ult and then rising rushing, and it's just like it just gets ridiculous. And then on top of that, of course, he has his death AoE, which once you get to like the latter half of the fight, if that goes off in a situation where you have Janemba's gauge up and you have his ultimate still, and you have like Orange Piccolo alive as well, like things can quickly, like if you're getting beaten up, things can quickly turn around from the AoE. Again, a lot of Orange Piccolos flying around. I've actually had an instance where Orange Piccolo, the transformed version, ended up killing the cell, and I just laughed as his entire team went to 1 HP. Like,
yeah,
his whole team basically went from full to 1.
Terrible.
The death AoE
Terrible.
Yeah, this guy's just really, really dumb. The Vanish Restoration, the main ability giving the blue card that has a chance to faint. Like if you faint with this guy's blue card, you win the game pretty much. Like you land this guy's blue card, you faint the opponent, and then you just go into Janemba and ult, and like the enemy actually can't survive. Like who survives that? Basically nobody. And yeah, I feel like his defense is actually not too bad. He has a really, really good environment in terms of Zenkai buffs that are available to him. You have, of course, on Regen, they actually gave 21, Purple 21 to Zenkai. So this guy obviously gets the HP buff Z ability plus the Zenkai ability from that character on the bench. And of course on androids, he still has that in addition to the, like the Purple 17 can double Zenkai buff him, the one that recently got a Zenkai. So this character is probably looking pretty good for the future as well, because I mean, they just, for whatever reason, refuse to give us good green characters. So we're way overdue for like a monster green drop. And when we get a good green, this guy is going to continue to be high up on these lists. So Purple Celt number 2. Let's move on to number 1.
Another character I don't have many opinions on because I don't own him. Him and the Goku I don't own. So I'll just say this. I can't tell you how many times I have been in a position where I'm winning the game, and this guy's defeated effect single-handedly beats me. For one, with these characters that have the final counter, you don't want to kill them with a character that, like he talked about it here, where a character they're strong against with typing. Like, you don't want to kill them with a green character, like Orange Piccolo. Why? Because your whole team will take type advantage damage, and they're all going to get blown up to 1 HP, basically. You don't want that. If anything, you would ideally kill them with the type they're weak against, so your whole team takes the opposite. But at best, obviously, you're going to probably be in type neutral situations. But I've been in type neutral situations or type advantage situations, and he does his damage. That's not really the problem. The problem is all the other ancillary stuff he does. He does the lock, he does the reduction, the card destroy, the gauge gone, the freaking Rising Rush. What? Like, what do you want from me? Like, what do you want from me? Like, Cell is the only character in the game where you get punished for killing him. There are other final counters, but none of them hit like Cell. Literally and figuratively. Cell is the only character in the game you get punished for beating. That's my experience with Cell. I hate him. I hate him with a burning passion.
All right, number 1 is Ultra Janemba. I'm sure everybody's very shocked by this.
I was going to say, nobody saw that coming.
It's close. I think there's a pretty sizable gap between this character and the rest of the game. I
that
don't
art,
really
man, is
know
so
what they were thinking
nice,
with this
but
guy.
no movement.
The most, I guess, similar release to this character that I can think of, at least in terms of how he plays and
Vegito
his
Blue
play style.
2 years.
It's Namagoku. Blue OG transforming Namagoku.
Oh, that
because
one.
What
Yeah,
this Janemba does, and his biggest asset, of course, it's honestly, I would even say it's probably bigger than his gauge, is the fact that he switches in and you actually can't do anything. Like, he switches in and he just controls the battlefield instantaneously. He enters the battlefield and you are powerless. You can't do anything, right? I think the biggest mistake on this, you guys want to know what I think is the biggest mistake on this character?
Blast armor.
It's this.
Yep.
Blast armor.
No.
Why does this have blast armor? He counters strikes and he counters blasts. He counters blasts via this card, the strike card. If you have a strike card with Janemba, and this is actually a dynamic that I've been talking about with characters like Orange Piccolo, and also Yellow Jiren has it as well, is Orange Piccolo and Yellow Jiren have blast armor on their strike cards, but they also have a counter green card. So if you have a counter, if you have a green card with Jiren transformed or Orange Piccolo transformed, and you're in mid-range, you basically can counter every single action the opponent can do, bar a beam blue card, right? You can counter tackles and strike cards with your green card, and you can counter blast cards with your strike because it has blast armor. Janemba takes it to a new level where Janemba doesn't even have to press a card to counter strikes. Janemba just stands there and eats it. If the opponent wants to go for a blast, Janemba can just go for the strike, right? And if the opponent tackles, guess what you do with Janemba? Nothing. You just eat it. And then the opponent can't do anything either. And if the opponent tackles you, you eat the tackle and then they go for a blast, you just blast them through it. And then on the sidestep, you can catch them with the gauge. Like, it's ridiculous. And not only do you catch them with the gauge, you follow the gauge up with a raw ult. It does supreme damage and inflicts the entire enemy team with inflicts the entire enemy team with extreme bleed, right? And then obviously nullifies endurance. So I mean, I'm not going to go into massive detail about what this character is able to do, because I pretty much talked about this character throughout the entire video and went over how he interacts with all these characters. He is a unit that does not care about cover nullification. He's able to still counter you. He is a character that in a lot of instances is able to just straight up kill the best characters in the game with like 3 or 4 cards, like Goku and Frieza, like the Gammas, like Purple Cell. I still fight on the occasion like Ultra Gogeta Blue. This Janemba like literally just kills him before his gauge can even activate. So a lot of these characters that thrive on the game and meta lasting for a long time, like, you know, 100 plus counts, that doesn't exist anymore, because you get this Janemba counter off and your opponent either has a green character that can eat it, you know, eat it well, quote unquote, which is at least half of their HP remaining after the ultimate is done, which is basically how every green character eats this. Like, I have not fought, I've fought basically full 14-star Zenkai buff, the full Z plus equipped green characters that we have in the game right now, which are not a lot, like Rose, Orange Piccolo, Revival UI Goku. I have not fought that many 23rd World Tournament Gokus, but I feel like it would be kind of similar for him, right? A lot of people's strategies is to proc the gauge early and then just switch into the green character so that they can eat the ultimate. That's fine, but they still take half their HP. It's not like you're, oh my god, yes, we got the gauge and the ultimate out of the way early. Like, you're still at half HP and then your entire team has extreme bleed. Like, it's not like it's not like you're at an advantage from doing that.
I'm gonna add on that specific point that you are at an advantage because you don't have to worry about it. That's why that's the strategy, right? Okay, let me say you're not that you're at an advantage, but you're not at as big of a disadvantage as you may believe. The extreme bleed is problematic, right? It is problematic. Don't get me wrong. There are also a lot of characters that just flat out are either immune to it or will clear it from your team. That's a thing too, right? Or from themselves. That's a thing. So it's either, and this is where, like, this isn't like a disagree point with Goresh. It's actually a proving Goresh right point. It's a pick your poison thing. Because Janemba is so oppressive because he does control the field. Like he said, you can't do anything. You're stuck. Against good players, anyway. You're stuck. I think that's a given, right? Right? Like, you got to be playing against some good players. Like, that is the point. It is a pick your poison thing, but that's the lesser of two evils, right? And I'm not too worried. And personally, if I was the opposition, I'm not too worried about my character losing even 75% of their life, to be honest. Because all that means is that my character is still alive. And if my character is still alive, then there's still opportunity for me to use that character. And if there's still opportunity for me to use that character, that means that I can still win the game. Not to mention the fact that a lot of characters have a lot of healing, things like that. So it's not necessarily the worst thing to have your character not die, is the point. Not dying is the point. Versus going down 3-2. You don't want to go down 3-2 at any point. Why? Because instantly you lose every single feasible advantage. All of a sudden, your opponent can switch more than you, which means they can vanish more than you. They can match you better with counters. They are more likely to win in that scenario. I bet if somebody did all the statistical math of different scenarios, 1v3, 2v3, whatever happens, all these different situations, when somebody whoever loses the first character, is probably more likely to lose that match because everything shifts on its head, right? And so I think that is more important. And I don't really have a problem with my character taking, maybe 75 is a bit extreme, but 50%, like he's saying is typically his experience, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. Especially if in hindsight that happened and I was able to catch Janemba or catch so-and-so and make it turn in my favor to where I'm the one that defeats the enemy the first time. Right?
I think sub count by the
I don't think I ever brought up rushing Janemba, but I did forget that I did forget that this applied to the ultimates. If you try to blow up Janemba, he can hide. But this is the same thing Go Freeze are doing, right? Where they could just run away, right?
Shortens out sub count by 10 effect unlimited time. So he's very hard to be rushed unless you're like locking him in with no switching or something like that. Melee based green cards, melee based blue cards, strike cards, blast cards, none of it works against this character. And then he turns around and he touches you and you die, right? His strike card does like 2 million damage.
So, his strike card does do a lot of damage, dude.
Feels similar to me to Namek Goku, the original Namek Goku, where Namek Goku like the opponent switches into Namek Goku, and what do? You know, it's a similar dynamic to Ultra Vegito Blue with his green card. If Ultra Vegito Blue has a green card, like there's not much you can do about it. Your best bet is pretty much just to like either float up and go for an attack or quick dash and go for an attack and hope he doesn't react in time to it. But it's even a different level with the Janemba because not only is Janemba gonna hit you with an ultimate afterwards, but Janemba doesn't have like the Janemba player doesn't have to even touch anything. Like it's just automatic. It procs by itself. So we'll see what they want to do moving forward here. I think a big part of why this character is so oppressive right now is again just the fact that they have refused for 7 months since the release of Ultra Rose to give us a good green character. Orange Piccolo is fine. He is not anywhere close to as good as he should have been. It's true. I mean, I don't even know if it would have been good if he was a lot better, just because then Regen would be even more ridiculous, and I already think Regen is the best team in the game, but we need a good green, and we do. I mean, it's time. We've been waiting for a good green for 7 months, and it's just, they just keep giving us purple and blue characters.
Well, Super Saiyan 3 is getting an equip. Maybe that matters. Probably not.
There we go. That's the list here.
I don't know.
Just to quickly recap the list.
I realized this, that I never really made my own opinions clear. I think that personally I'd have Janemba, Go Frieza, and VB as the best 3 characters in the game. from my experience. And I think I would round out the top 5 with the Gammas and Cell, and then the other 5 doesn't really matter. I wanted to bring that up because it kind of provides a little bit of insight into my own thinking. Because I value things a little bit differently than Goresh, and that's perfectly fine. Obviously, I hope nobody took this as any sort of contentious type video. It's very easy to perceive things that way. Goresh is my friend. I have no ill will or anything like that towards him. He's been on my channel several times. Same as I with his, you know. So, yeah, Janemba, though, I will say that I have a more optimistic approach, right? And this isn't a Janemba thing. This is any character in the game thing. I kind of feel like you can play around, not play around, but you can exist with any character in the opposition. Goresh, though, very clearly feels like you can't do that. You can't play against Janemba, and that's fine, right? Because Janemba is so oppressive, so overwhelming, so powerful that there's nothing you can do. And I largely agree with that because, like I said several times, he puts you in a compromised position where you don't really have a lot of options. In fact, your best option is to just give him what he wants.